What is up, guys? Welcome back to my channel, and today we're getting into my February 20th edition of the NCAA Bracketology here. Let's get into this here. As you can tell, we're not on our normal bracketology here. We're going to get to that in a minute, but before, I wanted to take a look at the top 16 seeds that the bracket makers, voted on here. As we can see, this was as of February 17th. So Friday, it came out on the morning, the Saturday. So all the chaos with the Saturday, Sunday games, looking at you, Purdue losing to Ohio State, that is not in effect. But I did want to take a look at this. So if we look at the first seed, it is Purdue as of the Friday. I do believe that with the loss to Ohio State and the dominant win from UConn against Marquette, that would flip places at this point. But as of on Friday, I do agree with having Purdue as the number one overall seed. They had the better resume at that time. So, yeah, Purdue number one, two UConn. I think it comes down to them. Houston maybe getting up into the debate here at the number three. They had a great weekend beating Texas. And Iowa State, they've kind of flipped back. They had a weird start to the Big 12 play. They've kind of played better. So they're the number 3 seed there. And then we have Arizona, the final 1 seed. They don't really have a tough schedule. So I assume if they play good enough and win those games, which Arizona this year has lost to some bad teams. So we'll see what happens. But I do think they will ultimately probably end up as that 4 seed. But then we have North as the 2 seeds. We have North Carolina, Tennessee, Marquette, and Kansas. Those 2 seeds. Obviously, Marquette just lost, I think, bad to UConn. But I think that's a fair 4 seeds. I think Kansas probably is above Marquette at this point, but fair 2 seeds right there. And then the 3 seeds, we have Alabama at the 9, Baylor at the 10, Iowa State at the 11, and then Duke at the 12 to finish out the 3 seeds. Then ultimately I think the top the 1 through 12 is where I pretty much agree. I was debating Auburn, Duke. I think that's a tight one. I think Alabama may be a little bit overrated above like Baylor and Iowa State, but ultimately I did agree with that. The team I was surprised on was San Diego State at the 14. If Joel and Darty's bracketologists have had San Diego State kind of hovering around a 6 seed, a 5 seed, as of recently the 5 seed. Don't get me wrong, they're a really good team. I just didn't think they quite deserved that 4 seed over teams that below them like Creighton. You look at a team like BYU prior to the Oklahoma State loss. I think they deserved it. But San Diego State, fairly good team there. They're at that 14. Auburn, like I said, I think they could have been a 3 seed, but they did lose to Kentucky, so that is paying off well for them. But then we have Illinois and then Wisconsin. Wisconsin, man, yikes for that team. But we'll get into that analysis in a minute. Just wanted to take a look here at what the committee decided, and that is the whole region. If that tournament started on February 17th, and if somehow all of these top 4 seeds advanced onto the Sweet 16, that is how the bracket would look. So, so now we're done with that. Let's get into our regular scheduled bracketology here with the February 20th edition. A lot of movement because we had a crazy weekend in here. So here we go. Bracket watch. It's official. Top overall seed is the UConn Huskies, getting that dominant win over Marquette, and Purdue obviously losing. They're at that 1 seed. Providence at the first team out there, and then the last team in, Ole Miss, right there. If you look at the bubble here, last 4 byes are New Mexico, Nebraska, Texas A&M, and Nevada. A lot of N's in that last 4 byes, but last 4 in, we do have Butler, who lost to Creighton, Gonzaga, Seton Hall getting a massive win over St. John's there to boost themselves into the last 4 in. And then we have Ole Miss. Then the first 4 out, we have Providence, Utah, Cincinnati, and Wake Forest. Next 4 out, we have Colorado, Villanova, St. John's, who's one of those. If you heard that Rick Pitino said this is the most unenjoyable coaching he's had, which I still believe in that St. John's team, but they have kind of struggled as of late, and now they're finding themselves falling here. They had a big time lead against Seton Hall, just couldn't secure it. And then we have Pittsburgh, who's kind of on the rise in the ACC at this time. All right, but if we look at this bracket here, with the movement, Seton Hall is going to be new to the field there. Ole Miss is falling to the play-in. Norfolk State new to the field as a 16. We have Butler new to the field, are dropping down to the play-in. In the East region, UConn, that number 1 overall seed. Florida Atlantic losing again here. They lost to South Florida. That's 2 times in this season they've lost to South Florida. That's not good. They're falling down to an 8 seed. So, Florida Atlantic's been a team that's been falling as of late. But then we have TCU jumping up to that 9 seed. As we mentioned, Wisconsin's falling to the 5 seed there. They just lost to Iowa in overtime. They're taking loss after loss, it seems like, right now. So they're falling. Just wanted to highlight Indiana State. Ever since they've been in the top 25, they've lost both of their games, which is against Southern Illinois, I believe. So that's not good for them. Still a believer in that team. But then we have Auburn falling to the 4, as we mentioned, losing to Kentucky at home. The first loss at home for Auburn of the season. Then we have Appalachian State falling to the 13 seed. Colorado State dominating Utah State. They're jumping up to the 6 seed right there. And then Florida jumping up to the 7. In the Midwest region, Purdue, the number 1 seed right there. Almost said the number 1 overall seed, but they're not that anymore after losing to Ohio State. Then we have Virginia falling to the 9. They got crushed to Virginia Tech yesterday. That was a surprise. Lost by like 34 points, I believe. Then we have Kentucky jumping to the 5, as we mentioned, beating Auburn. South Florida, as we mentioned, beating Florida Atlantic. They're at the top of the American Conference there. Watch out for that South Florida team, man. They're playing good basketball in a good American Conference, so they're jumping up to the 12 seed. Then we have San Diego State jumping up to the 4 seed right there. St. Mary's jumping up to the 6 seed. Oakland jumping up to the 14 seed. And then Nebraska jumping up to the 10. Okay, in the South region, we have Houston as the next 1 seed. Good weekend for them, as we mentioned, beating Texas and beating Iowa State. Then we have Washington State jumping up to the 8 seed. Michigan State jumping up to the 7. Mississippi State falling to the 10. And then Morehead State falling to the 15. In the West region, finishing it off here, Arizona is the number 1 seed there. Oklahoma falling to an 8 seed after almost beating Kansas, but couldn't hold on. And then we have Boise State jumping to the 9 seed. BYU falling to a 6 seed. They took a very bad loss to the worst team in the Big 12 in Oklahoma State. And then we have Texas A&M falling to the 11. Duke jumping up to the 3 seed. Charleston new to the field as a 14. South Carolina falling to the 7. Another loss, man. This team was red hot just a week ago, but they lost to Auburn bad, like by a lot of points, and then they lose to LSU. They were winning for most of that game, but couldn't finish it off. So disappointing for South Carolina. Still like that team though. And then Eastern Washington falls to a 15. So a little bit of a longer, intro there, but we are finally here. Let's get into predicting this bracket. And starting out with the first 4 games, Seton Hall versus Ole Miss. I do have to go with Seton Hall in that game. And then I'm going to go with Norfolk State to beat North Dakota. Gonzaga, I think, would hold off Butler, but that's a good matchup between 2 Bulldog teams, good programs. And Eastern Kentucky, I think, would beat Merrimack. So, for a spot in the round of 32, we do have UConn beating Southern. TCU at this point in time, I'm going with the 9-seeded TCU to beat Florida Atlantic. Then I'm going to go with the first big upset here. Indiana State beats Wisconsin. As I mentioned, Indiana State's been a cold team, but Wisconsin, man, they've been even colder, losing to some mid, Big Ten teams. I'm just not a believer in Wisconsin at this point in time. So give me Indiana State. Then I have Auburn beating Appalachian State. Colorado State, Seton Hall. I am actually going to go with the 11 seed Seton Hall, and that's no disrespect to Colorado State. I just think the odds will go against Colorado State in this game. Seton Hall's a good team in a very good conference, coming off a first four game, usually at least one first four team wins. I think that would be Seton Hall in that game. But then I do have Iowa State beating Vermont. Florida, I think, would be able to beat Nevada. And then North Carolina, I think, would hold off Colgate. Okay, moving on. Arizona versus Norfolk State. Give me Arizona. Good matchup between Oklahoma and Boise State, but I do think I'm going to go with the 9-seeded Boise State team. Clemson, Samford. Samford's a good 12 seed, man. I could see the upset, but I am going to give that one slightly to Clemson. And then Creighton, UC Irvine, another game where I could see the upset, but Creighton's kind of, reignited my belief in that team. So give me them to beat UC Irvine. BYU, I think, would beat Texas A&M. Duke, I think, would beat Charleston. South Carolina, New Mexico, I would have to go with the 7-seeded South Carolina in that team. And then Kansas, I think, beats Eastern Washington. Okay, moving on. Purdue, Eastern Kentucky. Give me Purdue. And then we have Texas, Virginia, 8 versus a 9 seed. Good matchup between two orange teams. I will go with the Longhorns, though, of Texas to move on. Kentucky, South Florida, 12 versus a 5 seed. I am going to go with the 12-seeded South Florida. Kentucky's a weird team, man. I do like Kentucky, but I think this team, man, they are prone for an upset in the first round. Just trust me, this team can go on a run. They can beat a lot of good teams, but I think they also could get upset. And I think that would happen there with a game against South Florida. So give me South Florida in the upset. San Diego State, I do think, would be Akron. And then St. Mary's, Grand Canyon. Good Grand Canyon team, but I do like St. Mary's in that game. And then give me Baylor to beat Oakland. Utah State, Nebraska. I am going to go with the 10-7-0 with Nebraska beating Utah State. And then Tennessee beats Quinnipiac. All right, final region here. Houston, Sam Houston. Give me Houston. Washington State, I think, would hold off Northwestern. Really good McNeese State team, but I am going to go with Dayton. And then I'm going to go with the 13-5 upset here. Give me Yale to beat Illinois. Illinois is a team. I like Illinois. Shannon Sharp is back, but almost blows a lead to Maryland this week. So Illinois is a team that I'm 50-50 on, very similar to a 4-seed like Creighton right there. But I am going to go with Yale to win that one in an upset. Then Texas Tech, Gonzaga. I mean, I could see Gonzaga winning this one, but I am going to give the edge to the 6 seed in Texas Tech. Give me Alabama to beat High Point. Michigan State, Mississippi State, I am going to go with Michigan State. And then Marquette, I think, would beat Morehead State. But honestly, could see a 15-seed upset there if any of these would pull it off. I think it would be a team like Morehead State, but I am going to go with Marquette. All right, so round of 32 now. UConn, TCU. Give me UConn. And then Auburn, Indiana State. As much as I want to go with Indiana State, I do have to go with Auburn to advance on. And then Iowa State, Seton Hall, give me Iowa State. And Florida State, North Carolina and Florida. I kind of want to go with Florida, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to give the edge to North Carolina in that game. In this region, Arizona, Boise State, give me Arizona. Clemson, Creighton, 5 versus a 4 seed, good matchup. I'm going to give some love, though, to the 5-seeded Clemson team. Moving on. BYU, Duke, 6 versus a 3 seed. I really want to go with my BYU Cougars, but we're just been too inconsistent. I got to go with Duke. And then Kansas, South Carolina, give me the 2-seeded Jayhawks. So, a week ago, I probably would say give me the easy upset in South Carolina, but they've been playing weird as of late. So give me Kansas. And then in this region, Purdue, Texas, I do have the Boilermakers moving on. South Florida, I kind of want them to move on, but it's against a San Diego State team. I think that would be. Haven't had a lot of upsets in this. You know, why not? Let's do it. Let's bring South Florida in a 12 seed to the Sweet 16, and Purdue fans would be absolutely sweating if they had to meet a 12-seeded South Florida team. That's just calling for a Purdue upset right there. But give me South Florida beating San Diego State. No discredit to San Diego State. I just feel like I got to go with some upsets there. So give me South Florida, good team. And then Baylor versus St. Mary's, 6 versus a 3. I am going to go with Baylor in that game. And then give me Tennessee to hold off Nebraska. And then finishing it off in this region, Houston, Washington State. Do have to go with Houston in that game. Battle of two Cougar teams. And then Dayton, Yale. I have to go with the 5-seeded Dayton. Texas Tech, Alabama. I am going to go with the 3-seeded Alabama team. And then Michigan State, I think, would beat Marquette, the 7-seed Michigan State team. Moving on past Marquette, I believe those two played last year in the round of 32. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to go with Michigan State to upset Marquette. All right, finishing it off here, UConn, or sorry, not finishing it off, but Sweet 16 time, UConn, Auburn, 1 versus a 4 seed. I do have UConn winning that one. Then I'm going to go with Iowa State to beat North Carolina. I know Iowa State just lost to Houston. That's a tough game on the road, though. I do still like that Iowa State team. So give me them to beat North Carolina. Arizona, Clemson, 1 versus a 5 seed. Give me Arizona. And then I do have Duke, Kansas. I do have... This one's a tough one. It's a rematch of earlier this year. I'm going to go with Duke in that game to beat Kansas. So 2 3 seeds beating the 2 seeds there. But then moving on, Purdue, South Florida. I do have Purdue getting past South Florida in that game as the 1 seed. And then Tennessee, Baylor. Really good Sweet 16 matchup. I could see this one being an instant classic type game. But I do have Tennessee pulling off that one. I just think their overpowered offense and that great defense will be too much for Baylor in that game. So give me Tennessee. And then Houston, Dayton, 1 versus a 5. I do have all the 1 seeds moving on to the Elite 8 in this bracketology. And then Alabama, Michigan State. I'm going to go with the 7-seeded Michigan State Spartans beating Alabama and moving on to the Elite 8. So, for a spot in the Final Four, UConn, Iowa State. I do have the 1-seeded Connecticut team advancing on, where they will meet Arizona or Duke, 1 versus a 3 seed. I do have Arizona, the 1 seed, advancing on past Duke to move on to the Final Four, where they will, in this side, Purdue, Tennessee. I am going to go with the 2-seeded Tennessee Volunteers advancing on to the Final Four, like that Tennessee team. And then finishing it off with Houston, Michigan State. I don't see Michigan State winning that one. Give me Houston. So kind of chalky, honestly, this bracketology, especially in this Final Four here. We have 3 number 1 seeds, UConn, Arizona, and Houston, and Tennessee. I'm sure this will change come the actual bracket, but for now, I have this as my Final Four. But right now, UConn, Arizona, great matchup. But I just can't pick against UConn there. Give me Connecticut to move on. All right, finishing it off, Tennessee, Houston. 2 versus a 1 seed. Give me Tennessee, the Volunteers, moving on to the Final Four. So we have UConn, Tennessee, 1 versus a 2 seed. And right now, UConn, man, they're just dominant. I just can't see them losing at this point. You know, obviously that can change. There's still a lot of basketball to be played. But at this point in time, I do think UConn will go back-to-back for the first time since the Gators did it. But anyway, guys, thank you all for watching this bracketology. A little bit of a longer one here, or I guess 19 minutes. That's That's not that much longer, but hopefully y'all enjoyed the content. Comment down below your predictions. Anyway, guys, peace out.